Hello, I'm Damien Barrett and welcome to Access All Areas, brought to you by Virgin Australia. The bye weekend is behind us, the finals have arrived. We'll preview each of the four massive games ahead and cover the latest trade news in an Access Big Ask special edition. But first, welcome to Jimmy Bartell and Matthew Lloyd.
Thanks, Damo. Lloydie, look, award season's over, as we had all week. All Australians, rising stars, some fantastic awards handed out. But let's get ready for the finals.
Yeah, we're looking forward to breaking down all four finals, Dame, and also chatting about the players who may move clubs at season's end.
Yeah, so with the week off, we might have forgotten, but here's how the finals are shaping up. Beginning Thursday night with West Coast and Essendon kicking off over there in Perth, and then concluding the round with the Brisbane-Richmond qualifying final at the Gabba. Lloydie, take us through the first of those games there, please. The West Coast-Essendon game. The last time they met, round 14 at Optus Stadium, the Eagles did a number on the Bombers.
Yeah, they did. They beat them by 35 points and 22 more scoring shots and 24 more inside 50. So it's a territory game and possession game for the West Coast Eagles versus that slingshot footy. But I want to take you back to that last time they met. And this was it. It was 22-4 inside 50s in the second quarter, 17-1 to start the quarter. And the Bombers just had no answer. They couldn't get the slingshot game happening, Jimmy. And it was all West Coast. Josh Kennedy just dominated Michael Hurley through this period as well.
You mentioned the territory game, of course. You know, the West Coast being able to set up. How important is Hearn and Yeo for the Eagles to gain that ascendancy?
Yeah, absolutely critical. And I just felt on this one where Sard and McKenna just couldn't find their run. So that was a real issue for them. They started hacking the ball out of that defence, which was a real issue for the Bombers.
Well, when the Bombers are playing their best footy, you mentioned that slingshot footy, call it ballistic football, which is exciting. Hang on and watch the Bombers go. Is that for them double down on the one wood for the Bombers?
Yeah, I hope they don't have to rely on that. They've got to do their job in the midfield as well, Damo.
Yep.
So if they're relying on, I think, in a big final, Sard and McKenna, it might win you one final, but it's not going to win you two or three. And that's where Hearn comes into it. And it's also Yeo, for the West Coast Eagles. They have to match those guys through the midfield. So Elliot Yeo, he's just powerful through that area. And I think this is an area where can Dylan Shield, who's been brought to the club to help them win a final, Merritt and Heppel, can they handle this dominance of strength through the midfield?
So who goes to Yeo here, Lloydie? I mean, you've highlighted him here as a key to this game, all Australian again.
Well, Dylan Clark, I'm not sure he gets picked, so he's in the mix of about 4 or 5 because they've got so many players to come back into this team. Stringer, Hooker, those Fantasia who didn't play in the last match. Well, then I hope they play Dylan Clark and he can get a tagging role.
Jimmy, you touched on the Bombers' ball movement. It comes out of the back line, doesn't it, with Sard, who had a really good season, McKenna really emerging as a player. Is that the key for this game? Yeah,
I think so, because you had a look at the way the Hawks played them just recently, the Eagles over there in the West. It was that willingness to run and create from behind, because if you play slow, and we saw in those early edits there, Lloydie, if you quick kick the footy, you might as well just walk down to the Eagles' half-back line and say, here, start the game. You need to shift the defence. You need to get players involved. Look at this, all the numbers coming up from behind. Sard is running up through the middle of the ground, not in his back 50. We see McKenna, if he can get the ball up around near the logos, then you actually move McGovern, Barrass, Shepherd, Hearn, all these players, because if they establish their position, the Eagles' defence, they're very tough to beat. But this is what gives Stringer space, it gives Brown space, it gives all their forwards room to move because of the speed up further up the ground.
And the confidence Essendon will have is that they've lost to Port Adelaide over there in Perth this year and also to Hawthorn in the last game, so they can be beaten.
Both clubs have got injury concerns going in, and they've both got big name players who I think need to have the dice rolled on. In Nick Natanui here, only played the 3 games this year, having missed with the knee injury and then the ankle injury, which kicked in late in the season. He's right to go, provided his body gets through the training that it's going to cop this week. And for Essendon's perspective, it's Michael Hurley.
Yeah, with Natanui, we saw when he came off that long spell how well he played and the impact he had on the rest of his teammates. It wasn't just possessions, it was that ruck work, the follow-up. We saw the amount of smothers, the knock-ons, which brought that midfield that you were speaking about, Lloydie, which is so dangerous. But Michael Hurley, does he play and does he go straight to the big job in Kennedy?
Well, Kennedy got a hold of him. He hasn't had a great year, Kennedy. We got a hold of him last time. But I think Hurley plays because he sets him up beautifully behind the ball. And Natanui, he's up against Bell Chambers, who's only played 1 game in about 7 or 8 weeks. So it's a good time to bring him back.
I think they both play. They both have to play for their clubs. Now, who wins this game?
I've got the Eagles by 4 to 6 goals.
I got the Eagles by 17 points.
Okay. Yeah. Geelong-Collingwood, the qualifying final there, the big game on Friday night, MCG. Jimmy, take us through this one.
Yeah, the Cats won this by 7 points, but that was way back in round 1. It seems like forever since they played. Tim Kelly was probably best man on the ground. Elliott was probably Collingwood's best small forward with 3 goals. Look, for me, there'll be 90-odd thousand here, but I think they'll see a low-scoring affair. The way the Cats have strangled the Pies, we know the Pies can get out and hit the scoreboard, but look at these last 3 times. 65 points, 45 points, 59.
How have they managed that, Jimmy?
Well, they've managed to, as I said, strangle. They're able to get their back 6 further up the ground, and that's where Tom Stewart's really important for me, because he sets the back 6 for the Cats' back line. So, obviously, Blitzars is important and the others, but Tom Stewart is like that anchor defender. When you think of McGovern for the Eagles, you think when Rance is playing that role, he's that one, almost the last one on the line. He can push players in different directions, but they get up and it's the forward half pressure. So in recent times, we've seen Dalhouse and Tui playing forward tackles. Even little Gaz had 10 tackles down there at Kardinia Park. So what they do is if they don't score on that first attempt, it's to repeat inside 50s and the weight of numbers inside 50.
There's many players who are going to have sleepless weeks going into their tasks on the weekend. None more so than Rhys Stanley, who has to go up against the game's best big man in Brodie Grundy.
Yeah, I was concerned. I was there round 1. I thought, geez, oh no, Brodie Grundy's going to get a hold of the Cats here. But after half-time, Rhys Stanley, you see this, his ability to get away from the contest, which is an advantage for him, which a lot of ruckmen don't have when they play against Brodie Grundy. Grundy can have 25 possessions and cut you apart.
Yep.
That's what he has to nullify. Grundy might be better in the ruck work and the ruck craft, but he can't allow Grundy to become the extra midfielder. Doesn't have to beat him, Stanley. He just has to match him, because Grundy can have such an impact not only at the centre bounces but in the general field of play.
And does Blitzarves play a role?
Blitzarves plays back. Blitzarves plays back. If I get
no
that.
rucking roles for this.
Look, I think he might pinch hit, and depending on matchups and things like that. But he was an All-Australian defender. He was All-Australian squad. Keep him in that position.
Lordy, the Pies got the ball moving well late in the year, didn't they? It almost coincided with Mason Cox coming out of the team. But what has that allowed them to do, and why would that be the key for this game?
It's what you dream of as a forward, that you can go left, you can go right, you can go up the corridor, and that's all you ask for. I think if you get slow ball movement like they had previous to that month, well, suddenly you just want long high balls coming in. But it's got all their small forwards involved.
That's it, and that's why the weight of numbers that Collingwood have with their midfield and half backs, but it's got to go forward. They can't just park themselves across the half back line, because as you mentioned, it allows the Cats defence to set up really well. We saw in one of those clips, Hoskin Elliott. I think he's important. If they can manufacture the matchup of him on Tom Stewart, because of his movement, he'll keep Tom Stewart actually playing as a defender and not as that attacking weapon across half-back. But the Cats, 3 out of 12 finals they've won since 2011, off the back of a bye again. Look, to me, there's only 4 players really who have experienced all those for the Cats, and they're the type who wouldn't bother them. Selwood, Taylor, Duncan, Hawkins.
Does it play on the coach's mind, though?
I don't think so. He doesn't come across as the type who focuses on the past too much. We see him in press conferences and the way he speaks. And those 4 gentlemen there, Lordy, I don't think they're the type that'll worry about the past. They'll be worrying about just what's happening come this weekend.
Tips?
I was always on Collingwood earlier in the week, but I think Geelong's team is so settled. I'm going to back in the team that finished on top, and too many ins for Collingwood, so I'm going to go Cats in a tight one.
Cats by 4 points for me.
Okay. As we gear up for that game and for other blockbuster clashes at the MCG this finals series, starting with that Geelong and Collingwood game this Friday night, make sure that you're prepared, and before you catch public transport to the AFL, plan your journey at ptv.vic.gov.au/Get me to the game. The next game for us to dissect is the elimination final between the Giants and the Bulldogs. And Lloydie, you've focused on an area where the Dogs could be exposed.
Yeah, I think it's the height of the Giants. So let's take a look at the Giants. They're big forwards. And I think last time they played in round 22, Jeremy Cameron and Jeremy Finlayson didn't play. So I think this is an area where if they can get on top through the midfield, the Giants, Young, Wood and Cordy could all have their issues with the height. We can't forget, though, the Dogs won by 61 points the last time they met. The Dogs kicked 10 goal 9 to 5 points in the second half. But I think if the midfield can get on top, I think this is where the Dogs can be vulnerable deep in their defence due to this height.
Matt de Boer's back after a few weeks. His first game back was actually against the Dogs, so now he's had a couple under his belt. Who do you send him to? Is it as obvious as Bontempelli, or is it Dunkley? Is it McRae?
Yeah, Bont or McRae, but I'd go after the big one. Yeah,
the big
Marcus Bontempelli. You can just even he's going to win the ball, but limit the effect. He's using the ball beautifully at the moment, so I'd just try and affect his disposal.
The Dogs are on a scoring surge, and they won 8 of their last 11 games. The last 3 games in a row: 137, 126, 121 points against respectively Essendon, GWS and Adelaide. It's going to be the key to what happens here, isn't it? This scoring.
Yeah, you're right. They've been kicking cricket scores, haven't they? And look, this is the ball movement we were talking about, what we'd like to see from Collingwood. See all this midfield movement. It's taking it forward and you're getting that run from behind and midfielders joining up. There's no lateral. There's no sideways. It's not slow kick mark. It's try and take the game forward. And if you're a mid-sized forward, it is a dream because you've got space. Yeah. You can just keep moving and you end up with one-on-ones or uncontested marks inside 50.
And they bat so deep. We haven't mentioned Hunter, Ed Richards, Bailey Smith, so they bat really deep through that midfield.
Who wins?
Giants by 2 points for me.
Yeah, I think the Dogs by 3 goals.
Okay. Then we get to the big qualifying final, Brisbane versus Richmond. We've got a fresh memory of what happened when these two teams last met. It was the last game of the year on the Sunday, or second last game of the year. The Tigers won by 27 points. I reckon the Gabba being the venue evens it up a little bit. I reckon it's worth 3 goals. So I reckon they're going in 2 goals under at this stage.
Yes, and I think the Lions would have loved this game to be played at 12 o'clock in the afternoon in the sun because we saw them play the Cats and the heat got to the Cats in the end because the Lions had one down in that game and they would have loved to play the Tigers in the sunshine up there at Brisbane. Last time, Martin and Neil were absolutely fantastic for the Lions. Jack Riewoldt is 4 goals. And for me, who takes that match-up, Lloydie? So if Lynch and Andrews sort of had such a good duel last time, and we know Grimes is going to go to Cameron, down the other end, do you go with Adams again and back the midfielders who put the pressure?
It didn't work last time, did it?
Because there was no midfield pressure. Right. So Riewoldt was able to get out on the lead and the Richmond mids were able to hit him. Or do you throw Gardner across and try and stop the lead?
I'd go Gardner because he's more defensively minded. Marcus Adams, I think, can get lost. And Jack Riewoldt is such a smart player, up, back. I don't think Marcus Adams is the right matchup.
The contrasting styles, which will be at play at some stages of this game, the stoppage goals kicked by the Lions will be crucial. I mean, they can create goals out of nothing, Jimmy. They did against the Cats here in the second last game of the year against the surging Tigers.
Yeah, they always say, the game's won or lost in the midfield, but it is really important in this game because you mentioned the styles. So for me, Richmond's style, that surge forward, if Brisbane can restrict that, but you have a look at all this. As soon as Richmond get a sniff, they take it forward with this forward handball, which has been a trademark of their footy. Sydney Stack finishes the goal, but look at all the Richmond numbers continuing to come in, surge it forward, whereas the Lions, stoppage and midfield goals. That's how you can stop it, by actually countering the other way. Right. So if Neil, Zorko, McCluggage, Berry, Robinson, Lyons can maybe kick 5 to 6 goals, at least it keeps the Richmond midfielders on their heels a little bit. They can't just take off. Look at Cochin take off. Prestia in the back of screen. He's come all the way from the stoppage there. So it's a battle of who can get the most effect from their style in the midfield.
Yep. Someone so crucial to the Tigers in their success of the past 3 seasons has been Nick Vlosten.
Yeah, he is, and the thing about it is he's even more important in a game like this because Grimes will have his hands full with Charlie Cameron. So they have to try and shut down Vlosten because if Grimes has his hands full with Cameron and you can try and limit the effect of Vlosten, well, it's a big win for the Brisbane Lions. But just super. They lost Rance. I didn't think they could win it. And then the way those two, Grimes and Vlosten, have stepped up has been brilliant.
And what they also did was get players who are in the selection mix into form in the VFL on the weekend. We saw Nankervis and this mark here, Marley and Pickett. Is he a selection curveball? I reckon he is.
Well, they were down by 40 points at 3/4 time, and the big Nank just stood up as all ruckmen do. Look at the swing on this, Lloydie. A nice little outswinger with the Duke cricket ball here as it came in, but a good finish from the big fella. Now, just going off the round 23 side and then against what played there in that match. So Nankervis, Butler and Pickett were in that VFL side, but the round 23, probably Bolter, Bolton and Solder are probably the 3 like for like or weighing up whether you take those 3 in.
Yeah, I'd back in the blokes that played in round 23, yeah.
More so. And not be, I suppose,
I'm interested in your thoughts on Pickett.
Yeah, look, I think he's a chance. Yeah. I know it's unusual for a player to make his debut in a final.
You think,
I think Bolton, Shai Bolton. I think he'll probably get the first game, but if he doesn't perform, he's had a quietish 3 weeks. Lloyd, you were at the other VFL game on the weekend, I believe, with your family?
Yeah, I was. I went and watched Geelong. My brother's the head of footy at Geelong, and we went and played Port Melbourne. So it was brilliant to be there with my kids, Jada, Kira and Jacob.
He loves it. And from one footy family to another in the latest Virgin Australia footy family story, here's a quick insight into the Rainbow Crows.
It certainly provides the members with a safe space to be able to come to the football.
Didn't matter pronouns, didn't matter chosen names or legal names, they could just be who they are. It's honestly been one of the most heartwarming things I've ever done.
And for more on that and your chance to win flights, accommodation and tickets to the Toyota AFL Grand Final, head to afl.com.au/footyfamily. Now for the Access Big Ask, and we've got a theme this week, boys. It's all about the latest trade news.
Yeah, we're going to throw some names at you, Damo, as best you can, as quick as you can. We want to know, where's Sean Higgins going to...
It's 50-50. I don't like sitting on the fence, but he's contracted for North. The Cats, Jimmy, your boys have had conversations with his management, and right now it's line ball as to whether he has that last year at North Melbourne or I think takes an offer from the Cats.
Another former Geelong Falcon he is, and Tom Papperley from the Swans. Where will he be?
Yeah, contracted long term to the Swans. Does want to come back to Melbourne. Carlton has been well aware of that situation for some time, and they feel they're pretty well placed to do something in that trade space.
The Suns' Jack Martin has requested a trade.
Carlton's leading the way there too. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions, the crosstown rivals from the Suns, are also interested, but there's been enough interest from his camp, from the Blues, to make me think that that's where it'll be.
Hawks always interesting with some of their veterans, Sean Burgoyne and Isaac Smith.
Yeah, Burgoyne has got a big decision to make. He can go long term in context to go to the Suns, and is offer there to stay at Hawthorn too. I think he might take the Suns deal. I think they're into his head enough now, and the fact we've got to this stage of this year and we don't know, it's clearly in his head.
Eddie Betts. Could he be nowhere next year? Could he possibly have his contract paid out?
He'll be playing footy.
Yeah.
Carlton, I don't believe Stephen Silvani wants him. I think the coach, David Teague, does. There's a bit of a power play maybe to unfold there. I don't see him being in Adelaide, though. I see a big exodus of Crows.
The Tim Kelly dance will start soon?
Yeah, it will. And again, there's no one at Geelong who thinks he's staying. As much as they are remaining hopeful, there's no real strong belief that he's there. And Lloydie?
Yeah, well, we'll finish. We've got no funnies, but we've got some brilliants, Jimmy. And you
sure it's not
played
funny?
AFLX. It's not funny because it's not funny for the Fev who you burnt, who you should have passed to. The full forward was on a brilliant lead, and you said no, it's a Jimmy time, and you just launched a barrel. And I love the ending. Matty Richo just didn't obviously nail his kick at the end, and he just looks at you and says,
"You're pretty happy with yourself,
Jimmy."
Jimmy.
I do that. Yeah.
I'm pumped. You've got to burn the full forward a few times. They've got to just knock their ego down a little bit. Just kick it to me. Just come up so I can kick it over your head.
Boys, thank you, and thank you for joining us on Access All Areas, brought to you by Virgin Australia. Have a good week and enjoy the finals, and we'll see you next Monday. Goodbye.